Okay, Doug Evans, welcome to the channel. Sprout King, best-selling author of the Sprout book and raw vegan for, I believe, 26 years.
That's right.
And I believe you also did 30 days of eating only sprouts.
Yes.
This is epic. So we have so much to talk about today. So let's hop right into it. How's it going? And we're doing a 3-part series. So everybody subscribe. It's going to be such a good one. We're going to learn in the next one how to do the sprouting. And then we're going to find out what you eat in a day because you're thriving. So how are you?
So I am the best ever, Gillian. Wow.
You've got some good energy. Do you think it's the sprouts? It's the living food?
100%.
I love it. I'm here for it. They make such a difference, right?
Yeah.
Imagine these last 26 years you were on cooked food versus raw. Where do you think you'd be today?
I mean, 26 years ago, I don't even know who that guy was. Like, I remember being in New York City, being like totally, and like 36 pounds heavier, just angry, constipated, highs and lows, dips in energy in the afternoon, addicted to chocolate, Coca-Cola, not Coca-Cola,
not cocaine, right, Doug? You sure?
Yeah. But Coca-Cola and candy and meat and bread. Like, I remember I would eat like a whole pie of pizza. Right? I'd eat a whole pie of pizza. I remember my meals at McDonald's where I'd have a 9-piece chicken McNugget, double quarter pounder with cheese, large fries, vanilla shake, hot fudge sundae, apple pie.
This is
large
just like it was yesterday.
That was just a meal, yeah. 2 all-beef patties, special sauce, lettuce, cheese, pickles, onions on a sesame seed bun. But I liked the quarter pounder more because it was more meat on the quarter pounder than on the Big Mac.
They need some sprouts on those quarter pounders, eh?
Well, I have a vision, literally, of replacing like the conventional iceberg lettuce, which is literally mostly, warping, degrading salad leaves with organic sprouts.
Yeah, because I've heard that, is it true iceberg lettuce is one of the lowest nutritional value lettuces there are? It's nice and water content-y though, but I've heard, if that's a word, content-y.
Yeah.
But it's
it doesn't have a lot of phytonutrients. It doesn't have a lot of antioxidants. Look, it's better than the burger. Right. So the fact that it's on there, but the fact is the average leaf of lettuce is traveling 2,000 miles across the United States, and sprouts are fresh. So when I tuned in to fresh consciousness, like everything just changed.
I can tell. So it completely changed you, right? So take us back, because a lot of us don't know your journey, and I'm so interested. So in 1999, what happened to made you want to give up the burgers? Because it sounds like you really loved all that stuff.
Yeah, I loved it.
Take us down the road.
It's so, like, as I'm reminiscing, I used to love like Twizzlers, licorice. I loved cotton candy. I loved rock candy. Like, I loved just junk. And so we grew up poor. So my parents, they're both passed. My father was an untreated combat World War II veteran. And we didn't have terms like PTSD, and they didn't have treatment. We just thought he was shell-shocked. And sometimes he was the sweetest man in the world. And sometimes he'd just go off the rails. And it was safer for me to be in the streets of New York, be on the subway, sleeping on the subway, than it was to be in our household.
Wow.
And I say this because it's true, and there should be no shame. Like, I had a lot of shame around that, and that shame, resulted in me getting into a lot of trouble. And so by the time I was 17 years old, I'd been in and out of justice problems and juvenile delinquency, and all of my friends were degenerates. And so at 17, I raised my hand and I said, I got to get out of Dodge. So I joined the U.S. Army as a paratrooper. And in the Army, it was unlimited food, right? So I loved the food in the Army, even though it was like, I wouldn't even call it food now, but I just loved the fact that when you weren't out in the field and you weren't on program, you could just eat. And when I got out of the Army, I had saved literally every dollar I made in the Army. Like,
amazing.
Because I wanted to save, and then I became a workaholic. So from 1987 through 1999, those 22 years from me being 18 years old to 33 years old or so, I was just working.
What did you do before the sprouting stuff?
I mean, originally I was just hustling. I was working in bars, restaurants, nightclubs, supermarkets, trading baseball cards, flea markets. Basically, there were 168 hours in the week, and I was using every waking hour I could to make money because I wanted to have independence. So money for me meant independence. And then, I slowly transitioned my career into more technology-oriented things, more design. I found a mentor who was in his 70s, and he taught the master's program of graphic design at Yale, and he took me under his wing. And through that kind of wild path, I was working with him and Steve Jobs on the...
No way.
You could find a video. If you Google Doug Evans and Steve Jobs, you'll see a
Cool.
video interview I did with Steve in 1993.
Wow, no way.
So I did that. And so now my career was around graphic design and computer graphics, which isn't even a term anymore. And then in 1999, my aunt developed type 2 diabetes. She became overweight, obese, and I get this call from my mother saying, "You got to come to the hospital." And I was like, what's going on? Like, I'm doing my thing. And she's like, "Your aunt is having surgery." And so we go there, and she's in a wheelchair. And I look down, and her feet were just swollen, that her toes, they looked deformed, and her feet were puffy. And they were going to cut off both of her feet below her ankles. And so no one explained to me about genetics or anything else. I just thought she was screwed, right? It was over for her. And then she died of complications with diabetes anyway. And
How old did she? Was she? When
she was young. She was probably like 62, 63 years old.
Yeah.
And then my mother, who was 66, she goes into the hospital here in South Florida, in Ventura. And she went in. We thought she had an ulcer. And she never came out of the hospital. 3 months later, she died of stomach cancer.
Wow.
And I watched her rapidly degrade. And I had never heard, prior to that year, I never heard the word diabetes. I never heard cancer. And then, before I could even finish grieving the loss of my mother, my father goes into the same hospital, dies of heart disease.
That was like my parents just died back to back within 15 days. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Wow. And my dad was from heart problems, and my mom was from cancer.
Yeah. So
Wow.
so it's just so for me, I thought I'm genetically cursed, right? So I should just live large, travel, have fun, etc., and just work because my days were numbered. And then I met a woman in New York, and she was vegan, she was plant-based. And she looked me in the eyes and she goes, "You're not genetically cursed. You are living a carcinogenic, diabetic, heart disease-laden lifestyle. And if you change your diet and you change your lifestyle, you can change your genes."
Wow.
And I was like, no. No. And she was beautiful, like you're beautiful, captivating, and we went out on a date, and our date was at the Big Apple Vegetarian Society, and they had a battle of the diets. And someone was talking about vegan, someone was talking
Battle
about
of the diets.
Yeah. Someone was vegan, someone was vegetarian.
And what year was this? You
This
wouldn't
was
think this would be
1999.
going on back then.
Yeah, 1999.
Okay.
And Paul Nissan, who lives down here,
Yeah.
he was representing raw.
I love it.
And he had a raw food restaurant called Fourth Dimension.
And you know what, you guys, he's coming on. So I'm going to his farm to do an interview over the next couple of weeks. So stay tuned, subscribe for that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So he was like OG, right? And so after that, I was confused and inspired. And so then that night we went to a health food store in New York, and I bought David Avocado Wolf's book, Nature's First Law, The Raw Food Diet, which every chapter ends with cooked food is poison. I mean, like very subliminal planting, like 26 years ago, it's like yesterday, tuned in. And I read about raw, and everything seemed to make sense. Like cooked food is dead, raw food is alive, meat, dairy, animal products, cause these chronic illnesses. So in a 2-week period, I went from eating anything to fresh, ripe, raw fruits, vegetables, seeds, nuts, seaweed, and sprouts. Wow. So that's 26 years ago.
And then, so what happened? What did you notice take place when you shifted the lifestyle?
I mean, for one, my heart opened. Like my heart opened to love. And I started to see things differently than I did before. I started to have a degree of compassion, to openness. And I remember I started to meditate. I started to do yoga. I started to appreciate the beauty of nature, right? The subtlety of plants and different flavors. I remember, I used to look at salad as salad, and now I could recognize every single green that was in a baby salad mix. And so I started to crave these healthy foods. And I had a rule for myself. And I had so many mentors and so much information, right, from Ann Wigmore and 𝒔𝒂𝒗𝒆 and Gabriel Cousins and Steve Meyerowitz. And I learned so much from all these people. But I didn't relate to them and their lifestyle, because here I was, I'm living in New York City, I'm an ex-paratrooper, graffiti writer, and these were all like hippy-dippy, trippy people. So I couldn't relate. I remember Gabriel Cousins, coming wearing his little beret, or David Wolf coming and wearing a poncho, the shawl. So I couldn't relate to that. But I saw qualities in these people that resonated a level of deeper evolutionary consciousness than I experienced, but I would get glimpses of it. So I would go to, like, I remember the first time going to David Wolf's retreat at Harbin Hot Springs, and all the people there were just so like wild, but also just so loving. And I was like, oh, this is my tribe.
Yeah.
Like, this is very, like, all these people just open. And I remember going to other events, and people were like, well, what do you do? AKA, how much money do you make? And these people were like, oh, what's your favorite fruit?
Just a little different.
What's your recipe? Do you want to come take a walk? You want to go take a hike? You want to go take a hike in the springs? And all of a sudden I felt like a level of primal sweetness. And also I tapped into the abundance of plant life.
Wow.
And there was a watermelon patch with black seeded watermelons near Eden Hot Springs, and they would bring a pickup truck filled with the watermelons. And my mother, may she rest in peace, she'd give us a slice of the watermelon, and we would, have that, and that was it. And here it's like everyone had their own watermelon, cut a watermelon in half, here's your half. And so I developed this strategy, which was I was going to eat raw as much as I wanted until I was no longer hungry or full. And I was going to shift money that went into eating toxic things or superficial material items into nurturing my body. And so that went on for years. And I started a business with this woman in New York, Denise. We started Organic Avenue. And we started to do cold pressed juices in glass
I
bottles.
think you're one of the first juice places, right?
First organic cold pressed juice in the United States.
Wow, that's epic.
And we sold millions of juices.
No way.
Yeah, we had over 10 stores in New York City, practically in all corners.
Wow,
And
incredible.
So this
New
was,
York, it's such a great place to be healthy. I know a lot of people think if you live in a city like that, it's just too hard, but it's not. Like whenever I go to New York, there's so many places to get juice, so many places to get fresh salads or fruit on the corner.
That's right.
Yeah.
There was a lot of options, and I got really healthy there. I got really inspired. Organic Avenue became really successful, and I, had this awakening where I could no longer do work for something that wasn't aligned with healing the planet, saving the animals, taking care of myself. There's a line in an Og Mandino book that says, I'll greet this day with love in my heart, and most of all, I will love myself. For when I do, I will zealously inspect all things which enter my body, my mind, my soul, and my heart. Never will I overindulge the requests of my flesh. Rather, I'll cherish my body with cleanliness and moderation. And it was like, whoa. So I started to
Powerful.
I started to look at everything. And so in the beginning, like I was eating, and turns out like animals in nature do not overeat. They don't overeat. They eat until they're not hungry or they're full.
Mm-hmm.
Like you could, like we're going to Africa.
Yeah.
And if you see my last trip to Africa, you could see a lion in the wild, and you could see hundreds of gazelles, and the lion, carnivore, right, can dominate any of the gazelles. They will kill one. And it's brutal to watch. Like I don't like to watch, etc.
Yeah.
They'll eat one, and then they will go take a nap, right? And then they may not eat for days, right? So they're eating, even though there's an abundance of food, they're not overeating. And if they're hungry, they get off their tush and then they go eat, right? They go find. And what happens is New York, a lot of healthy things in New York, but New York is also a food swamp.
Yeah, I know. I can
Right?
see.
There's junk. You can find the gems. Thank God. Shout out to Ken Spector at Happy Cow. You can find healthy things, but you can also be mired in junk, right? In junk.
Just like anywhere across this country and most countries in the world right now, right?
So you have to have a lot of desire, more so than discipline. Like I like to be desirous than having to discipline, because discipline is hard. It means restraint. Desire is like following your heart.
True.
So I was desiring fresh. So what happened is I was eating fresh, water-based, antioxidant-based, nutrient-dense, and I just started to feel better. And even though if I smelled the rosemary chicken, like someone would go off in my brain and I'd be like curious, like where's that smell coming from? But I now knew that wouldn't serve me. So there was a level of combining my intuition with knowledge, and then a little bit of discipline, like resisting. So I did that, and I started to grow sprouts. I saw sprouts, fresh sprouts growing in the Union Square Farmers Market.
Mm-hmm.
And I was so curious. Like I went beeline right to them. And so I started to grow sprouts. And for 26 years, I've been growing sprouts over even before I was vegan, I liked sprouts. But then when I moved to the Mojave Desert in 2017, I bought my first land.
Mm-hmm.
And my goal was to live a simple life. I wanted to live in the desert. I wanted to be in a tent, no running water in the tent. And I wanted to just be out in nature. And it's really quiet in the desert, like really quiet.
That's nice. It's nice when we're not stimulated so much, right? The quiet does something for you.
The quiet, yeah.
Yeah.
So, and I camped last weekend outside of Austin, Texas. and by a lake or a river, and there were frogs and birds and chirping that it was hard for me to fall asleep, even with earplugs, like the sound. And I don't like earplugs. I'd rather just be in peace. So I'm in nature, and the only problem I had was not only was I in an environmental desert at Wonder Valley Hot Springs near Joshua Tree, it was also a food desert. There was no food, like not even junk food where I was. No farmers markets, no health food stores, nothing. So then I asked for guidance. And I've never been a very religious person. You know, I've always considered myself somewhat spiritual. But I asked the universe, how can I live my lifestyle, my diet? Because intuitively I said, I got to grow my own food. And turns out it's really hard to grow your own food. And it's even harder in the desert. And that's when the universe said, you know how to sprout. And
I got to get more in tune like this. I always hear people say, I asked for the answer, I got it.
Well, no.
I want answers like this.
Well, look, I believe, Gillian, you're a genius.
Thanks.
You already know the answers to every one of your questions. And you know, because there is a collective intelligence. So whether it's like at the tip of your tongue or it's just in the ether, if you ask for guidance, it will come. Now, sometimes you may not like the answer, to the question. Like I have a friend, who's 100 pounds overweight, and he's asking for guidance. And the guidance says, bro, do a water fast, then do a juice fast, and then eat sprouts and clean up your diet. And he's like, you're right, I should do it, but I can't. I need to eat this other food. Like I don't have the discipline. Like literally, I don't have the discipline to do it.
And I think a lot of people feel like that.
So we'll go down that conversation. But for me, I asked the universe, what can I do? And the universe said, you know how to sprout. And so the next day, all day, I was meditating, reflecting, and researching sprouts. And every single sentence, every word I read was like a mic drop. It was so powerful. And I can summarize. Number one, sprouts are vegetables. They're not this little garnish. They are vegetables. And they are vegetables that have stem cells that are rapidly expanding and rapidly growing, that a broccoli sprout or alfalfa sprout will increase its volume by 60 times in under a week. Like this growth is just beyond exponential. Sprouts are, and I know you're a mother, you have 2 kids, like that is a miracle, right? And every time you look at the kids and you walk them and you hold their hands and you feel them, they're a miracle. Every single seed is a miracle. True. And because there's so many, and because no one is advertising seeds, no one's advertising sprouts, they get relegated to like just nothingness.
But they're one of the healthiest things we can consume, right?
Yeah, the most nutrient dense.
Yeah, because I don't know anyone doing what you're doing.
Well, what happened is, I just spent the weekend with John Mackey, the founder of Whole Foods. And John was like, sprouts are a terrible business. And I said, why? Short shelf life, low margins, plastic packaging, require refrigerated distribution. So there are no national or international sprouting companies because there's no money behind it. So as a result, there's no money. So it's almost like sprouts are like the purple cow, right? You could be driving down the road and you see a black cow, a brown cow, black and white cow. It's just a cow. You see a purple cow, you look at the cow and like, wow, right? Sprouts are like the purple cow, except they're so small, they're relegated to the smallest shelf in the health food store that you see them, and there's no advertising. You'll never see a Super Bowl ad for Sprouts,
No.
right? You're not even going to see a regular ad or a billboard for Sprouts. So when something happens with Sprouts, it's interesting. And so I saw Sprouts, number one, as vegetables. And to me, vegetables are food, right? So that was number one. Number two, I saw Sprouts as vitamins and minerals, right? And if you kind of peel back the onion, go into the data, Sprouts contain every micronutrient, every phytonutrient, every polyphenol, bioflavonoid, antioxidant, every amino acid to form complete proteins.
Wow. Yeah,
And-
because sprouts are really high in protein, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're 20 to 100 times more nutrient dense than mature vegetables. And I like vegetables. But imagine having something that is so nutrient dense.
And what's the best? What's the best sprout? Like if people could add in one sprout, the most nutrient dense, is it broccoli?
Well, broccoli is the most researched.
Oh, I
It's
see.
the most researched. And what happens, broccoli sprouts are known for their sulforaphane, right? Radish sprouts have their sulforaphene. And all cruciferous vegetables have different isothiocyanates and different glucosinolates. So there's a whole mystery, but very, very little money has gone into researching these because the research is going out to try to say, sugar doesn't cause heart disease, fat doesn't cause, all the money is going in other directions. But the facts are that sprouts are really, really nutritious. And if you were to speak to your doctor will tell you, you are much better off getting your nutrients from food, whether they're vegan or whatever. You're going to say, get your nutrients from food, right? As a result, people are getting big gaps and voids in their diet. So there's this whole rush towards biohacking and creatine and whey and protein powders and supplements and NAD and glutathione and all of these different supplements because the food is devoid of the nutrients. And turns out when I lived on the sprouts for the 30 days, I thought maybe this is dangerous. Maybe I'm going to cause brain damage or liver damage. Maybe something's going to fail. So I reached out to Dr. Mark Hyman, Dr. Dean Ornish, Dr. Joel Furman, Dr. Joel Kahn, Dr. Josh Axe, Dr. Alan Goldhammer. And as I'm talking to these medical professionals, wellness experts, even called Dr. Oz, right? Some of these doctors were plant-based, some were keto, some were eating don't overeat, some were functional medicine. The thing that they all had in common, they all loved sprouts.
See, it's good for any lifestyle that people are on, right?
Exactly.
Any diet.
Yeah, Ben Greenfield, who's become a friend, is the furthest thing from vegan.
Yeah.
Right? He loves sprouts. He eats broccoli sprouts. He eats garbanzo bean sprouts. He's had me on his podcast twice.
I love it. Yeah.
Right? Because, my goal is, and I think this is a difference, my goal is to get along with everybody. Right?
Me too. Yeah.
If I were to speak to your children and tell them the number one thing they could do to be successful in life is to be able to get along with people who they would have an aversion to normally. If they can learn to love, see, respect, listen, and get along with a wide array of people, that's what it takes to become successful.
Very well said. Very true.
So what I found is that for me, I don't want to judge people. There's a reason why people are doing what they're doing. If you see someone, driving in a Bugatti, smoking a cigar, right? Something happened to that person in their life, which is putting them up into that situation, right? And they want to prove something.
Yeah.
Right? They want to show something.
Yeah.
And I don't want to judge because like I could see, like I look at that car and go, wow, I'd love to have that car.
Yeah.
Like that looks like it would be fun. But then, you know, I look at it and go, oh, the seats aren't leather. It's using a lot. It's using a lot of fossil fuel. You know, I don't want it to be scratched. Like, and all of a sudden, all these stories in my head. But what I want to be able to do is look at this person and just have love for them, not judge them, not envy them. How can I just have love for this person? And as a result, in the beginning, I would go out to meals and I'd want everyone to be raw vegan. And then I realized like, they're eating what they're eating because they've chosen to eat this and they have free will. And it's not for me to tell someone what to eat or not to eat. So I just started to bite my tongue and I started to be an example. I started to just do my thing. And back to the story. So the third thing that I discovered from Sprouts were that Sprouts were medicine. And right here in West Palm Beach, we have Hippocrates Health, where you can go and treat major serious illnesses with Sprouts, right? You could go to True North Health. What do they give you? Sprouts. You go to Ann Wigmore. What do they give you? Sprouts and wheatgrass. You go to Optimum Health Institute. Sprouts. So wheatgrass, Sprouts. So these living foods, there are places around the world that are tuned into this consciousness. I start to say, well, we're in the U.S. I'm in New York. I'm in the desert. I want the facts. I want the data. So I started to go into the data and found out that there were more than 2,000 peer-reviewed published studies on sulforaphane, the anti-cancer compound found in sprouts, in broccoli sprouts. So I contacted Dr. Jed Fahey, who's the most published author from Johns Hopkins, and we started to collaborate. He became my advisor. And with all of this knowledge and all of this support, I went to New York City and I pitched the Sprout book to one of the largest publishers in the world. And she's like, Doug, I don't know, like, if anyone's going to buy a book on Sprouts.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I go online to Amazon and there's 100 books on Sprouts and none of them have sold many copies. And I was like, no, you don't understand. And then like I do the reveal, whoosh, and I have recipes made all raw, all plant-based, 50% made out of sprouts, professionally developed recipes. And I swear, Gillian, the editor was eating the sprouts out of the palm of my hand. And having never published anything before in my life, I walked out with a book deal.
And the rest is history, because now it's a bestseller.
Bestseller was number 71 of all books on Amazon.
That's incredible.
Right, 4.2 million books, top 100. It was
That's huge.
number one vegetarian book, number one plant-based book, number one vegan book, it was number one on the charts. It was unbelievable, but it makes so much sense that I put all of my focus and all of my love, and I had support from the community. And so people like Rich Roll was very kind. He put me on the podcast. Will Bolshevitz, I interviewed him, and he shared so much information, and we did Instagram Lives. And Jesse Itzler, he did Instagram Lives with me, and I went on podcasts, and all of a sudden, people were now hearing about Sprouts, and they were expecting it. I swear they were expecting a little bleep, and then it was going to go back down. And I was like, no, I'm just going to pour it on. I'm going to devote my life to sharing this message with the world. And it's just continuing to go and grow and expand.
Wow, incredible. And so that's probably part of your 30-day journey too, right? Like that's maybe what led you to that, like the 30-day journey. So you stuck to 30 days, you only ate sprouts.
Oh, yeah.
Like that's it, nothing else?
Well,
just the sprouts?
Just the sprouts.
Just sprouts.
Just sprouts.
Like you just pick them up and eat them.
Just ate them. And what happened is I did the sprouts not for marketing purposes.
Yeah.
I did because I had no other food.
Yes.
So this was in the beginning, and I was keeping my logs and journaling. Oh, okay. I had 6 jars going, and in 1 cubic foot with 6 jars, I was growing 2,000 plus calories a day of sprouts.
And you felt good still? Like you felt good on the 30 days?
I mean, I felt like I felt alive. I felt inspired. I felt motivated. I felt flexible. I felt energetic. And
talk about a cheap cleanse, right? Because sprouts are so inexpensive to do, right?
yeah, it was like under $5-6 a day
That's good.
to have this level of food. And so what I realized was you could grow like a pound of beef. You have to feed the cow water and hay or whatever you're feeding them every day for 2 years. It takes 1,500 gallons of water to grow a pound of beef. And I'm in the desert. Like water is sparse in the desert. And you could grow a pound of sprouts with 1 gallon of water.
Wow.
So this is such like an incomprehensible number. People will hear this and will go in one ear and out the other. But just think about 1 gallon of water for 1 pound of sprouts versus 1,500 gallons of water, which would take up this room to grow a pound of beef. So environmentally, it just made so much sense.
Yeah.
Right? But the nutrient density of having enzymatically active living foods, like that was the game changer for me. When you have food that is easy, like beans and legumes are a healthy part of the plant-based diet around the world. When you sprout them, and what's great about today, right? I wrote my book. I wrote the sprout book before AI.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
Before AI.
Yeah.
But now that everyone has AI, everything, just search, validate, do your own homework on this, and you will see that like sprouts don't have the fanfare, but they carry the punch. The data is behind them. So,
well, yeah, like you said too, look at Hippocrates. Look what they reversed there. And they're high sprouts, right?
oh yeah.
They're not like high fruit. Well, we're going to find out what you eat in a day, but have you ever, and do you ever do high fruit, or you think it's more important to stick to the greens?
No. Well, here's the thing. Right now, I'm healthy. Like I'm doing somersaults, right? So I'm super healthy at this stage. So I love fruit. So we'll cover that.
Yeah.
But why I did the sprouts for 30 days wasn't even intentional. It was like, what am I going to do to eat, right? And if the research, like Captain Hook would feed his sailors sprouts when they would go out, his pirates, sprouts, because when they'd go out to sea, they were getting scurvy because they weren't getting vitamin C. And when you take a seed and you sprout it, on day 3, you're increasing the vitamin C 300%.
Unreal. It's incredible.
So this is a miracle. So what happened for me, I was hungry. I didn't eat cooked food. I wasn't going to drive, an hour and a half to the grocery store. So I ordered these sprouting jars. I ordered seeds, and I just started to sprout. And like an animal in nature, and I was like literally communing in nature. I was living, on tens of acres by myself in a tent, and I'm eating the sprouts and I'm meditating and I'm wandering around. This is a very uncommon life for me because I came out of New York, LA, San Francisco, and I just need my body needed to chill. And so what happened is I had the jars going, and I didn't have any, no TV, right? And I wasn't consuming social media. I was posting and I was still connected, right, with people. I was getting emails and texts, but I had no one was eating my brain, telling me, oh, I need to eat this, I need to do that. I wasn't getting food porn. I just had my sprouts. So I would eat when I was hungry, and I would just nosh on the sprouts. And after, a couple of days, without having added salt, oil, sweeteners, sugar, all of a sudden I could taste the sprouts. And because I wasn't in a rush, I wasn't distracted and eating while I'm watching TV. I was like savoring every sprout and chewing them. Like I always heard for decades, oh, chew your food, chew it 30 times, chew it 50 times. I was doing that. And all of a sudden, I was assimilating the nutrients into my body. And it was a spiritual experience for me. There was just no exaggeration.
And the food probably has a different impact on us when we're present like that, versus if we just rush, because it's, especially when it's living, right? It's like there's a relationship there. And if we're just not paying attention, like stuffing it down versus giving it the respect it deserves, maybe it impacts our body differently.
Yeah, well, the digestion begins with the eyes. So you open your eyes, you look at the food, and then, like in a very Pavlovian way, you start to salivate, and then you chew it, and you masticate it, and you extract the water molecules from the cytoplasm and the insoluble fiber, and so you're pre-digesting it. And now these living enzymes, this water-based soluble and insoluble food is able to enter in the bloodstream without creating a very toxic, acidic environment in the body. The number one over-the-counter drugs, Tums, Rolaids, Pepto-Bismol, all these antacids, because people are consuming processed food that requires acid to break it down. So this is just easily flowing. And so I was eating the sprouts out of necessity and out of joy. And when I was feeling the sensations of hunger, I could immediately satiate them with a handful of sprouted garbanzo beans, which is at least 10 grams of protein. And you're chewing them, you break them down, they feel good, and you're getting this sense of satiation. And, the Japanese, I learned from Dan Buettner, right? You want to eat until you're 80% full, not 100% full, right? So I was eating, and I just knew that I had so many sprouts growing that I was safe, right?
Yeah.
I was safe, and that no one was going to take my sprouts.
Yeah.
And I didn't have to eat them all. Like I didn't have to hoard the sprouts. I didn't have to eat them all at once because I knew they'd be there. So a lot of people's dietary problems are associated with hereditary thinking of scarcity, right? From multi-generational scarcity.
True.
And the dopamine triggers in the brain are satisfied with salt, oil, and sugar, right? So this scarcity is going. So what happens if you eat something that is very fat, and this could happen with raw foodists, and I'm glad we're talking about it. I could eat back in the day 3 or 4 avocados. You gave me an avocado, I put dulse on it, or I put salt on it. I could be pounding down avocados, and I would be feeling a dopamine rush. It was like a drug. Boom. And also being raw vegan, eating avocados and nuts and coconut and oils, like you could become overweight.
True.
On a raw food diet.
Yeah.
Right. So I had been through that already. So I was already doing mostly carbohydrates and fresh. So I did the 30 days of the sprouts. I was running 5K, 10K every day in the desert, doing my push-ups, doing my pull-ups, just like loving life. And then, I went into LA and I went to the Santa Monica Farmers Market, and the fruit there was, oh my God, it was like paradise. It was just paradise. So once I started to eat fruit again, I was just eating a lot of fruit. And then all of a sudden, like I ate so much fruit that my body triggered and says, Doug, you need something savory. You want something pungent. You want something neutral. You got to just slow down. And I regulated. And now I'm about 50% fruit and 50% sprouts and
Okay.
seaweed.
I like that. And make sure you guys stay tuned, subscribe, because I'm so excited to see what you eat. And you've sold so many books and you've been around so many people who have been inspired to sprout because of you. So you've seen a lot of their experiences. So what are some things you see take place when people start sprouting?
I think for one, they have a sense of freedom and autonomy. Like they're like, wow, I can grow my own food. They're celebrating the success. Like, no exaggeration. I have 250,000 followers on TikTok and a couple 100,000 on Instagram. People are messaging me every day, whether they're putting it in their stories or they're DMing me, and they're so happy that they're growing their own food. Like a simple jar like this.
Yeah.
You take a 1/4 cup of seeds, right? 35 grams of seeds will grow into 350 grams of sprouts in 5 days without soil, sunshine, or fertilizer.
And it's easy, right? I'm so intimidated because I buy sprouts, but I've never done it myself. So I'm really excited for you to show us how in the kitchen.
Oh my God, you are going to become a sprouting master.
Okay,
You're
I'm
gonna,
excited.
You're going to like be having sprouting retreats. Like
Yeah.
people are going to come and
Yeah.
you're going to be sharing this message.
I love it.
And so like this sprouting kit, it's $79.99 for the
Yeah.
jar, and you buy the seeds, pays for itself in the first month.
Yeah.
If you use it. If you don't use it, don't waste it, because there's a shortage of them, coming through. So
These are the best quality. This is your company. I'll link it below. These are the best quality sprouting jars I've ever seen. Like, I've never seen them like this. They're so nice. So good job. Well done.
Well, I designed this because, my wife dropped one once.
Yeah.
And so I literally made the detents
Cool.
to fit her small, dainty hands. And I wanted thick glass, and I wanted a straight edge.
Nice
And I
job.
wanted a stainless steel filter that I could scrub and sanitize, because the early days, and there's a chapter in my book called Junkyard Dog,
Yeah.
where I explain how early days of sprouting was with a mason jar, cheesecloth, and a rubber band.
Yeah.
And the mason jar was designed for canning. So the shape of the jar actually can collect water. The cheesecloth is designed for making cheese, which is probiotic and cultured. And the sprouts, as they're growing, are shedding microfilm and exudate. And so they need a sanitary environment. So by using stainless steel versus the cheesecloth, you reduce the microbial load significantly, and then you want to be able to clean it. And so all like the subtleties, like I bought everything on the market. I set up a little lab. I'm very focused. I've got ADA, attention deficit advantage.
Yeah.
So I go deep and I can lock in, on these things. So I wanted to have something that was bigger, that was prettier, that people would use, and that would really function. So I wanted airflow, air exchange, proper drainage. And I tested for 3 years before I built a product, because there's a level, I'm with a friend. So I was, extremely, vulnerable, and I didn't want to, put out something in the market that wasn't good. Like, everyone is scared to fail, right? And, and to be judged. So I just said, oh no, I'm going to do a little water break.
Yeah.
I'm going to do something that I really want it to be, practical and functional and aesthetic. So we did that. But on the sprouts, it's a simple thing. Everyone knows vegetables are good for you, and vegetables are expensive in the store. And we live in areas like we're in South Florida. There's a lot of options. You can buy sprouts. You could buy fruit. We're going to go to farmer's market tomorrow and go shopping.
Yeah.
There's fun stuff that we can do. There's a lot of the United States that are food deserts. They have no access. There's no Whole Foods. There's no Publix. There's no Albertsons. There's gas station food and 7-Eleven. And I want those people to have access to the food that we are consuming. So I look at sprouts as a means of food equality, and that everyone can have them, from the richest people in the world to the poorest people in the world. And one of the things, like, it's hard to believe, like, we're sitting, in a beautiful studio, we're recording, and like, for our viewers, it's not even news. This should be front page news. 25,000 people die every day of starvation in the world today. So somehow we have enough food to feed 50 billion farm animals, but we don't have enough food to feed all the humans, right? And the feeding of vegetables into animal agriculture is a 90% loss, right? So for every 100 calories of vegetables that are grown, 90% of those are feeding animals to produce 10% again of edible food.
Wow.
So aside for whether it's causing cancer or heart disease or high cholesterol, forget about all that. Just the inefficiency of the use of food. Mm-hmm. So what's powerful is eating things that are simple. So my vision, like my real vision, is that all produce should be grown locally and consumed locally, and the only thing that we should send around are seeds. And I would love to see a world where people who have a garden and they have space, they're growing front yard, backyard, side yard, on their windowsill. And if they don't have any of that, if they're in a dorm room or like this little studio.
Yeah, because you can even do sprouts in an apartment anywhere, right?
Anywhere.
You don't have to have, it's like the one thing that you can grow, even if you're in a small apartment or whatever.
It's the number one gift for send your kids to college, send them with a sprouting kit. They could sprout in the dorm room. So,
and they'll transform your health too, right? Your spiritual life. They're alive, living so alive, right?
It taps people into abundance consciousness.
Yeah.
Like literally so many people are living in fear and they're living in scarcity and they're watching, their stocks go up and down and they're looking at their debt and they're so concerned with money. And when you have sprouts, like, you're never going to go hungry. So that removes a big risk. Like, it's a lot of freedom with sprouts. And you can save so much money. There's a line that I never will forget, that Warren Buffett would never buy a Starbucks for $5 because that one cup of coffee will cost him $10 million over his life because of compounding interest. So you start to take money away from things that aren't serving you. You could just save. Like, we should do a thing on the website, how much money people are saving by growing their own food, eating their own food.
True. Major money, right?
Oh,
and feeling better. And then when you feel better, you have and create a better life, right? Don't you think, like, your life over the last 26 years has been drastically better and better quality people around you, everything, versus if you had stayed on that McDonald's fast food lifestyle, right?
Oh my God. I was wearing all black clothes. My hair had dandruff. It looked like it was just so crazy. And you met my wife, right?
Yeah,
so I have
beautiful.
a wife and a sweet daughter. I manifested that in my living. I was living in the desert and everyone said, Doug, you're never going to meet anyone living in the desert by yourself. And I was like, well, you can put your projection elsewhere. I'm going to attract my divine goddess. Like, she's going to come here. We're going to connect. We're going to have the most amazing, epic relationship. And literally, I would have people coming, visiting my land, and a friend of a friend knew my wife. And my wife was from the Netherlands. She was traveling around through the country. And her goal was to meet friends of friends. And so I qualified. Mm-hmm. So she came and all of a sudden we met. And there was no physical attraction whatsoever. But we just had a meal. We took a walk. We started to talk. And then we ate sprouts. And then all of a sudden, like, we're in nature.
Yeah.
And it could be there was an illusion that I was the last man on earth because there's no one else around.
No.
But also, it was being able to see. If I would have met my wife in the Netherlands or New York or LA or Miami, we never would have hit it off. Too many distractions.
Yeah.
Right? So I recommend, like, if you want to meet people, go out in nature.
Yeah.
Go
it's
out in
just
nature.
life-changing, right? Wow.
Yeah.
And she is a goddess. So I'm happy for you.
She's the best.
Amazing. And you've been raw 26 years now. So
Yeah.
what would you say is the biggest thing you've learned on your journey?
I've learned to love.
I love that.
Yeah. Greet the day with love in my heart. And also know that do hard things. Like, fasting is hard, discipline's hard, walking's hard, push-ups hard, pull-ups are hard, just getting up, when you don't want to get up. Like, a cold plunge is hard, cold ocean. Like, do hard things with love, and then you get easier. And I remember reading the Scott Peck book, The Road Less Traveled. And once you accept that life is difficult, life is no longer difficult.
Well said. Wow. Well, this has been incredible. I've loved sitting down with you, having you on, and I'm so excited to expand in our series in our next 2 videos. So coming up next, we're going to go to the kitchen. You're going to teach us how to make these beautiful sprouts, right? So
Absolutely.
And there's so many different sprouts we can make, right?
We're going to have a party.
and
We're going to have a
microgreens?
sprout party.
We are. And our microgreens still sprouts too? Because you do microgreens too, right?
I do microgreens. The difference, and by the way, these terms, sprouts, microgreens, it's all jargon, right? The things that we have is we have seeds and then we have plants, and plants are at different stages. So the difference between sprouts and microgreens as we know them is microgreens typically are grown in a sprouting medium, in soil or on coconut coir or an unbleached paper towel, and they grow straight up and they take weeks to grow. Sprouts grow in a jar without soil, sunshine, or fertilizer. And with a sprout, you're eating the entire vegetable, the root, the shoot, the endosperm, the embryo. And with the microgreen, you're eating above the fold.
Oh,
so
I
you
see.
don't
Okay.
eat the root structure.
Yeah.
Now, some people pull the root out, which you can do, but then might have soil on it, or some people don't like eating dirt.
Yeah. And lentils, you do sprouted lentils?
Sprouted
Because
lentils.
those are really high in protein, I think, right? I've heard one of those are one of the highest protein foods you can get.
Yeah, sprouted lentils, sprouted mung beans, sprouted green peas, and sprouted chickpeas, garbanzo beans.
See, a lot of people think you can't eat sprouted chickpeas. They tell me that all the time. You can't have them that way. They have to be cooked. But I don't think so, right? I eat them from Whole Foods.
Oh, I eat them all the time.
Yeah, and you're thriving. And so what would you say when people incorporate sprouts, what are some of the most common benefits they can expect to experience?
They're going to have better sleep. They're going to have better sleep. They're going to have more energy. They're going to have epic movements. Like, high quality poop is just epic. And you'll have that because of the soluble and insoluble fiber and how the sprouting process reduces phytic acid, lectins, and enzyme inhibitors and makes the proteins more bioavailable, makes the starch more bioavailable. So you're eating something that is just much more able to be digested and able to extract the nutrients into the bloodstream.
Wow. Okay, you're making me want to eat this for lunch.
Yeah.
I never thought about doing that before.
Oh my God.
You're making me want to just eat the sprouts by themselves.
Well, you're a chef. So
Yeah.
you can put your favorite sauce. You can make a tahini sauce. You
Yeah.
can make a
I put these on coconut wraps all the time, like a ton of sprouts, and it's just, they're so great, right?
well, I encourage you today
Yeah.
to experiment with adding sprouts. There's the average person has about 12 occasions that they're eating in the course of the day.
Yeah.
I do this all the time. I make sure people are eating sprouts on all 12 occasions, adding to a smoothie, adding to a juice, adding to a snack, adding to their granola, adding to their acai bowl, adding to their wraps, adding to their soup, making a salad, adding to the salad, or making the salad out of the sprouts.
Yeah, exactly. I love it. I love your passion for it. It's so amazing.
Well, it's like I do it, and
Yeah.
it feels like it's unleashing the potential of nature. You're communing with one of the greatest miracles in nature, and it's affordable. Like for some reason, like if I told you, oh, a shot of broccoli sprout juice was $50, right? Which is the cost of like an NAD drip. People would rather pay $50 for if it was something else. So some people are only perceiving things because they're expensive.
True.
And the fact that these are so affordable, some people just dismiss them. And what I wanted to just say is like, we have to get away from the superficial monetary component of this and look at what is the quality. And when you're investing in the Sprout consciousness, you start to tune in at a whole different level, like your whole world will shift.
I love it.
So I think what happens is you'll get more energy. I don't want to ban your YouTube channel, right? But if we talk about GLP-1, right, Wegovy and Ozempic, people are taking these weight loss drugs, which is basically causing the food to rot in their stomach.
Crazy.
So that it's secreting GLP-1 to give someone a sense of satiation through rotting food. Basically, they don't want to eat it. But when you're eating sprouts, which are high fiber, low fat, low calorie, you eat that whole bowl of sprouts, you will feel full. And that entire bowl that you're eating of sprouts, which is filled with soluble and insoluble fiber and antioxidants and vitamin C and sulforaphane and all these phytochemicals, you eat that, you will feel full. And if you can't eat that whole thing plain, then most likely, Gillian, you're not really hungry.
Yeah, true. Exactly. And there's nothing better than like growing your food fresh and eating it, right? It's the best.
Yeah.
So look, we can do that with this.
Yeah. So the experiment is, eat the sprouts and you'll feel good, and then you'll watch. And the longer you can not eat processed food, the better.
Yeah, because that's the worst. The processed food is the worst.
So nobody other than Red Foo eats sprouts as a dessert. Red Foo, do you know Red Foo?
No.
From LMFAO.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Party Rock.
Eats sprouts as a dessert?
Oh, yeah. He makes this incredible, he takes a date, he takes cacao paste, he takes berries on it, and then he puts broccoli sprouts on it.
No way.
So he's eating broccoli sprouts as a dessert.
Yeah.
But no, like if you were to just eat all these other foods and that are sweet, that are processed, you won't have a desire for sprouts. So that's where the best thing to do is to break fast with sprouts, because you have a fresh start every day. And if you can start on sprouts, you'll eat more sprouts.
Okay,
If you start with something else, it's going to be hard to get to the sprouts.
Good point. Well, I'm excited to see what you start with. If you start with the sprouts and the What I Eat in a Day video, and then coming up next, we're going to learn how to make these. So make sure you guys stay tuned. That's going to be an epic video and an epic series, seeing what Doug eats, because he's just got so much energy, passion, love, life, and we all want to be like that. That's just the way to live our best life, literally inside and out. So thank you for coming on. I'll link everything down below, the sprouting kit, your book, your website, your socials. Go follow Doug and be sure to subscribe. I'll put a great video on the screen right now for you guys to watch as well. And we'll see you in the next one. Bye.